A slave is chained in his master's house, watching the man who owns him twist his leg until the bone snaps. Epictetus looks up at his torturer and says, "I told you this would break." No screaming, no begging, no rage, just cold observation of a predicted outcome. His master stares at him in horror, not because he broke a slave's leg, but because the slave remained unbroken. This is the moment that reveals the most dangerous truth about human freedom. Your circumstances don't determine your mental state. Your response to your circumstances does. And most people spend their entire lives as slaves to situations that a literal slave proved could be transcended. What Epictetus discovered in chains will either terrify you or liberate you. There's no middle ground. You think you understand oppression because your boss micromanages you or your bank account controls your choices. But here's what the data shows about learned helplessness. Dr. Martin Seligman's research reveals that 73% of people develop psychological paralysis when faced with circumstances they believe they cannot control, even when those circumstances change and control becomes possible again. Modern psychology has confirmed what Epictetus knew 2,000 years ago. External circumstances have almost no correlation with mental freedom. Studies of concentration camp survivors, prisoners of war, and victims of extreme abuse show the same pattern. Dr. Viktor Frankl's research found that survival and psychological resilience had nothing to do with physical conditions and everything to do with what he called the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose one's attitude in any given circumstances. But here's the part that will make you uncomfortable. Most people in comfortable circumstances are less free than slaves who understood this principle. The wealthy Roman citizens who owned Epictetus were controlled by their reputations, their possessions, their fears of loss. They were slaves to external validation. Epictetus, who owned nothing, not even his own body, discovered complete internal autonomy. History proves this pattern repeatedly. Frederick Douglass taught himself to read while enslaved and became intellectually freer than his illiterate owners. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison and emerged more psychologically liberated than his captors. The pattern is consistent. External bondage often reveals internal freedom, while external freedom often conceals internal slavery. If this is challenging everything you believe about freedom and control, hit that like button. It means you're ready for the hard truths that most people spend their lives avoiding. Epictetus was born into slavery around 50 AD in Hierapolis, Phrygia. His name literally means acquired. He wasn't even given a real name, just a designation that he was property. He was brought to Rome and owned by Epictetus, a wealthy freedman who served in Emperor Nero's court. The broken leg incident wasn't an isolated act of cruelty. Epictetus was systematically tortured, beaten, and dehumanized. But while his body was being broken, his mind was being forged into something unbreakable. He wrote, "No one can hurt you without your permission. You are hurt the moment you believe yourself to be." This wasn't philosophical theory for Epictetus, it was survival strategy. When your body belongs to someone else, your thoughts are the only territory you can defend. But here's what makes Epictetus extraordinary. He didn't just endure his slavery, he transcended it. While chained in his master's house, he studied Stoic philosophy under Musonius Rufus. He discovered that the same chains that bound his body could never touch his capacity to think, to choose his responses, to maintain his dignity. When he was finally freed, probably after Epictetus's death, Epictetus did something that shocked Roman society. He continued living like a slave. He owned almost nothing, lived in a small hut, ate simple food, wore basic clothes. But now it was by choice. He had learned that true freedom isn't the ability to acquire whatever you want. It's the ability to want nothing that you cannot control. The man who had been forced into poverty chose poverty. The man who had been denied choices made the ultimate choice, to be free regardless of his circumstances. Here's exactly why most people are less free than a Roman slave, and how Epictetus discovered the mechanism of true liberation. First, most people confuse freedom with control over external circumstances. We think we're free when we can buy what we want, go where we want, do what we want. But neuroscientist Dr. Robert Sapolsky's research shows that this type of freedom actually increases anxiety and depression. When you believe your well-being depends on controlling external outcomes, you become a slave to circumstances that are largely beyond your control. Epictetus identified what he called the dichotomy of control, the fundamental distinction between what is up to you and what is not up to you. Your thoughts, your values, your responses, your character, these are up to you. Everything else, other people's actions, natural disasters, economic conditions, even your own body, is not up to you. Second, most people are enslaved by what psychologists call external locus of control. Dr. Julian Rotter's research found that people who believe their outcomes are determined by external factors experience higher rates of anxiety, depression, and learned helplessness. They become victims of their circumstances because they believe circumstances determine their internal state. Epictetus proved the opposite. He developed what modern psychology calls internal locus of control, while literally having no control over external circumstances. He realized that his master could control his body, his location, his daily activities, but could never control his thoughts, his values, or his response to suffering. Third, and this is the revolutionary insight, Epictetus discovered that wanting what you cannot control is the source of all human misery. When you attach your happiness to outcomes you cannot guarantee, other people's approval, financial success, physical health, political outcomes, you make yourself a slave to uncertainty. Stop for a moment and ask yourself this. What are you trying to control right now that you actually have no control over? Your spouse's mood? Your boss's decisions? The stock market? Your children's choices? And here's the reframe that changes everything. Every ounce of energy you spend trying to control the uncontrollable is energy you're not spending on what you actually can control: your effort, your attitude, your response, your character. Epictetus realized that his master could break his leg, but could never make him angry about having a broken leg. That anger, or the absence of anger, belonged entirely to him. If you're starting to see how this applies to your own life, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. This series is going to systematically destroy every excuse you've ever made for why external circumstances control your internal state. Tonight, before you sleep, do this exercise that Epictetus used to maintain his psychological freedom. Make 2 lists. On the left, write down everything that's bothering you right now. Everything you're worried about, frustrated by, or trying to change. On the right, categorize each item as either up to me or not up to me. Be ruthlessly honest. Your health? Largely not up to you. Genetics and accidents happen. Your effort to stay healthy? Completely up to you. Other people's opinions of you? Not up to you. Your character and actions that shape those opinions? Up to you. The economy? Not up to you. Your skills and work ethic? Up to you. Here's what you'll discover. 80 to 90% of what steals your peace is in the not up to you category. You're being enslaved by things you cannot control. Tomorrow morning, implement Epictetus's daily practice. Before you check your phone, before you engage with the external world, spend 5 minutes asking yourself, what is actually up to me today? Not what you hope will happen, not what you're trying to make happen, but what is genuinely within your control. Your specific 7-day freedom protocol. Day 1. Every time you feel frustrated, ask, is this up to me or not up to me? If it's not up to you, redirect your energy to something that is. Day 2. Practice wanting what you already have instead of having what you want. Day 3. Choose your response to one annoying situation instead of reacting automatically. Day 4. Accept one thing you've been trying to control that you actually can't. Day 5. Take complete ownership of one area where you've been making excuses. Day 6. Help someone else without expecting anything in return. Practice freedom from the need for reciprocity. Day 7. Reflect on how much mental energy you saved by not fighting uncontrollable circumstances. Epictetus spent every day practicing this distinction. When he was beaten, he focused on maintaining his dignity rather than stopping the beating. When he was hungry, he focused on his gratitude for simple food rather than his desire for luxury. When he was mocked, he focused on his own character rather than others' opinions. The result? A slave became freer than his master. A man who owned nothing became richer than emperors. A broken body housed an unbreakable spirit. Years after his freedom, when Epictetus taught philosophy in his small school in Greece, wealthy Romans would travel hundreds of miles to learn from the former slave. They came seeking the secret to the freedom that had eluded them despite their power and wealth. Epictetus would point to his simple hut, his basic clothes, his meager possessions, and say, "I am freer than you because I want nothing that I cannot have. You are enslaved because you want everything you cannot control." That's the wound-healed. The man who was born with no freedom chose to be free. The man who was tortured refused to be broken. The man who owned nothing possessed everything that mattered. When his former master died wealthy but miserable, and Epictetus died poor but content, the world learned the most important lesson about human freedom. External circumstances are temporary, but your response to them is who you are. The broken leg healed. The psychological chains never formed. Every time you feel controlled by your circumstances, you have the same choice Epictetus had. You can focus on what's happening to you, or you can focus on how you're responding to what's happening to you. Only one of these choices is actually yours to make. The slave who said, "I told you so," to his torturer understood something that free people often miss. The moment you stop trying to control what you cannot control, you become uncontrollable. If this fundamentally changed how you think about freedom and control, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell. Drop a comment telling me one thing you've been trying to control that you need to let go of, and I'll heart the best responses.